Hi guys, welcome to section B. We're going to actually talk about the digestive system today, okay? So let's talk about what the digestive system does. Basically, it breaks down food that can then be used as energy. So when you eat, the food is in much too big of pieces. And I'm not talking like bites, I'm talking about the molecules that even make up the food. In order for those molecules to get into and out of the cells, they need to be broken up into smaller molecules. And then specific molecules that can be used in different chemical reactions. Okay. So there's three main parts of digestion. There's the first part, which is digestion itself, and that's the breaking up of the food into smaller pieces. Okay. But the other part of digestion or the digestive system is absorption. Those nutrients need to be soaked into the circulatory system so then they can be transported all over your body. Okay. And then the third function or the third part of the digestive system is elimination. Okay. There's a lot of extra stuff that your body doesn't need. When you eat, the nutrients are taken out, but all the stuff that isn't digested or all the stuff that's considered a waste product stays behind. And that's what turns into poop, honestly. And that gets removed from the body. So digestion, breaking it down, absorption, it's getting soaked into your body, and then elimination, it's removed. Okay. And you can see, move myself, that's the little part. And I'm going to show this to you guys again. That is basically all the organs that are part of the digestive system. Now, food doesn't pass through all of these organs. We're going to talk about the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas, and the I guess those three. Food doesn't actually pass through those, but they are part of the digestive system. Food passes through the rest of these, and we'll talk about that as well. Okay. All right. So when we talk about that first part of the system, we talk about digestion, and there's actually two different types of digestion. The first is called mechanical digestion, and that's physically breaking the food into smaller pieces. Your mouth starts that process. When you take a bite of something, you've already chopped it into a smaller piece. That's mechanical digestion. Then you keep chewing it, and you're chewing it into even, or you're breaking it up into even smaller pieces before you swallow it. That mechanical digestion continues in the stomach, though. There's smooth muscle layers in the stomach, and your stomach actually squeezes the food as it's digesting it, and that helps break it down into smaller pieces. Okay. When your stomach growls, when it rumbles, that's those smooth muscles kind of looking for food. And it's like, hey, there's nothing here for me to work on. And so your stomach rumbles and growls, and that's what you're feeling and hearing. Okay. So mouth and stomach are the biggest mechanical digestion locations. The other kind of digestion is chemical digestion, and that's basically enzymes or chemicals come and break up the food. So remember when I showed you the complex carbohydrates the other day, and we've got these big long chains of carbons, and there's hydrogen, there's other stuff in there. If an enzyme comes and breaks that apart into smaller pieces, that's chemical digestion. Okay. And I also talked to you about chewing the cracker. There's an enzyme in our saliva called amylase, which starts to break down starch into smaller pieces. Okay. So chemical digestion actually does start in your mouth with your saliva. Okay. It continues in your stomach. And that should be kind of an obvious one. We know that there's acid in our stomach, and that helps break the food up. Okay. But actually, most of our chemical digestion takes place in our small intestines. There's other enzymes that come in and help with that. There's actually an enzyme that neutralizes the acid and all kinds of stuff going on. Okay. So both of these take place in the mouth. Most of the chemical digestion takes place in the small intestines. Okay. So now this is definitely something you're going to be responsible for, the pathway of food, okay, from start to finish. Our digestive system is called, the fancy name is this alimentary canal, and it's basically like a continual hose from our mouth down to our anus, okay? You can't see that on the diagram, but there it is right there. That's, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's your butthole, okay? That's where the poop comes out. If you think of a donut, okay, think of a regular donut, kind of visualize that, and the donut hole in the middle, it's not really part of the donut, right? And so our alimentary canal is not really considered part of our body. Stick with me here, okay? So if I have a donut, the donut hole is not part of the donut itself. If I make that donut really tall, same thing. It's just kind of an opening that goes through the middle of the donut. It's in between the donut, but it's not in the donut. And that's how this tube works. It's like you can swallow something, and if it doesn't get digested, it's just going to come back out. I know my kids swallowed coins at some point, and it just kind of comes back out the other end. That's kind of an interesting, unique thing about our digestive system. Now, certain things do get broken down, and they can still be very harmful to us. But this tube, even though it kind of curves around and does all these things, it starts at the mouth and it ends at the anus. If you were to stretch out this alimentary canal, it would be about 25 to 27, 28 feet long. Really, really, really long. It's all crammed there into our bodies. Okay, so obviously it starts with our mouths. We put food into our mouth. That's the first spot, okay? Then we have a tube called the esophagus that takes it down to our stomachs, okay? So mouth to esophagus. Now there's this action called peristalsis that's taking place. There's smooth muscle in our esophagus, and that smooth muscle is squeezing. So when you swallow, the smooth muscle is pushing the food down the esophagus into the stomach, okay? So then it gets to the stomach. The food is mixed with liquid, it's mixed with saliva, it's mixed with acids, so it's very pasty at this point, and now it's called chyme. That's the proper word for this partially digested food, okay? Now, we have this little, it's called a sphincter. It kind of pinches off the opening between the esophagus and the stomach. If you ever get heartburn, that means that some of the stomach acid is coming up into the esophagus where it's not supposed to come, okay? Typically, that's kind of a tight opening. It opens with the peristalsis to let the food in, but then it closes back off. But sometimes it will open and some of the acid comes up, okay? All right, from the stomach, we go into the small intestines, which are about 7 meters long themselves. So most of the length of the digestive system is the small intestine, okay? That's right around 23 to 25 feet all by itself, okay? Now, we're going to talk about absorption in a minute. The nutrients are actually being absorbed back into the body in the small intestines. So you need a lot of surface area in the small intestines. And so they're lined with this thing called villi. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that on the next slide, okay? And that just increases the surface area of the small intestines to allow that process to take place, okay? Still not poop yet, all right? So from the small intestines, let me change colors here. From the small intestines, we dump into what's known as the large intestines. And then it keeps going this way, and then this way, and then down this way. Okay, so our large intestines, or our colon, is next. So from the small intestines right here, it goes into what's known as the ascending colon, the transverse colon, and then the descending colon. So there's 3 sections of colon that kind of surround your small intestines, okay? At this point, the water is being pulled out of the digested material, and what's being left behind is poop, okay? And so you probably, at least by this point, I don't know for sure if it would be considered poop in your ascending colon, but for sure by this point, and definitely down there, it's basically poop. It's kind of on deck, okay? The very last part of the large intestines, so this is still inside your body, is known as the rectum. Totally unscientific term for it. It's your poop chute, okay? That's really the on-deck circle, okay? And then finally, the opening, the end of the tube, is the anus, and then that's where the poop comes out and hopefully into a toilet. Man, I hope nobody besides you guys watches this video. Okay, so that's the pathway of food, all right? Now, back to villi, okay? So I want you to take your hand, and I want you to imagine the distance it takes just to go around your hand if your fingers are together, okay? Not a very long distance. If I open my fingers up and I draw a line around all my fingers, it's obviously going to be a longer line, okay? And so what your intestines are lined with are a bunch of these little fingers, okay? Because this is where most of the absorption takes place, we need a lot of surface area. We need a lot of contact with these capillaries, okay? The capillaries are little tiny blood vessels which are absorbing the nutrients and then taking it to the rest of our bodies, okay? But these villi aren't just single fingers, okay? So if our intestines were smooth, it would look like that, okay? But they've got these little fingers on them to increase the surface area. But it's even more than just that, okay? So if I take one of these fingers, okay, like it's lined with its own fingers, okay? And then we've got the next one. So what this does is this so greatly increases the surface area of our small intestines. If you were to lay out your small intestines and actually flatten it so that, instead of this squiggly line, it was like a straight line, your intestines would cover like a tennis court. Huge. And that's all shoved into our bellies here, okay? And each of those little fingers, each of these little guys right here has capillaries in it. And so the nutrients are absorbed into your bloodstream through that. So amazing. God is incredible how he created this. Okay. Now let's get back to these accessory organs. These are organs that aid in digestion, but the food doesn't actually pass through those. Okay. So our first is our liver. And our liver is kind of the detox system of our body. It filters out a bunch of stuff. It's going to come up again when we talk about the excretory system. Another function of the liver is that it produces this substance called bile. And bile helps us digest fats, okay? Fats don't play with water very well. They kind of avoid each other. And so the bile kind of coats the fats and helps us get it out of our system, okay? This gallbladder, this little green little pocket down there, is just it's like a balloon. It doesn't produce anything. It's just a storage area for the bile. And then it dumps right into the small intestines. You can't really see it. This little duct kind of goes back here somewhere and dumps it into the small intestines, okay? You probably know somebody that has had their gallbladder removed. It's kind of a common thing. And that's okay. They still have bile. Their liver will still produce the bile. They just don't have a store, like a reserve of it ready to go. And so they might not digest fats quite as well, but it really doesn't change much, okay? And then the pancreas is really important. The pancreas produces all kinds of enzymes that assist in digestion. Pancreas actually produces insulin, which is what allows the glucose to get into our cells. It also produces an enzyme or a substance that neutralizes the acid from the stomach, okay? So our stomach has all that acid in there. That's why when you throw up, it burns, because it's acidic, okay? Once that chyme gets into the small intestines, it's still acidic, but the pancreas produces a special substance that kind of calms that acid down, okay? All right, let's talk about vomiting, okay? When your stomach rejects the food for some reason, you get food poisoning, you've got the flu or whatever, it triggers it to go back up the esophagus and out your mouth. This is why it burns, because it's filled with acid, okay? Diarrhea is, it's obviously very watery poop, okay? This can also happen if your intestines reject something. Maybe it doesn't agree with you, again, food poisoning or the flu. What happens is that chyme, that processed food stuff, it's not going to stay in your large intestine long enough for the water to be pulled out. It's just going to kind of get pushed through those large intestines. And so there's extra water in with the poop. And so that's basically diarrhea. Okay. If you get constipated, that's, really like not watery poops. I know, seriously, I hope nobody else watches this video. You might be dehydrated. You need to drink a certain amount of water to have healthy poops that are right in between. Seriously, I can't wait to talk to you about this live. All right, that's it. No more poop. Bye.